Good evening, folks. I'd like to call to order our school board meeting for November 17th, 2021. If I could get a roll call, please.
Mr. Cox,
Here?
Mr. Henry,
Here.
Mr. Llewellyn,
Here.
Mr. Wolf.
Can I get you all to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
With me at the front table here, it's got a little loud there. We've got Mr. Tom Wolf, board member, Mr. Don Henry, board member, Dr. Andrea Townsend, our superintendent. My name is Joe Cox. I'm standing in for Leslie Miller tonight. She's on vacation. To my right, your left, is John Llewellyn, board member, and Ryan Sloan, our district treasurer. And out on the floor tonight, we've got Melissa Tice, our assistant superintendent, Devin Berry, human resources, who's not here tonight, Jack Haig, he's with us, and of course Ryan Sloan, and that's where we're at. So, it is recommended that the agenda for November 17th, 2021 meeting be adopted as presented. I need a motion and a second, please.
So moved.
Second.
Sloan?
Mr. Cox,
Yes?
Mr. Henry,
Yes.
Mr. Llewellyn,
Yes.
Mr. Wolf.
Item number 6, it is recommended that the minutes for the regular meeting held on November 3rd, 2021 be approved as submitted. No changes? Okay. Mr. Sloan, please.
Motion.
Motion and a second. Need a motion and a second, please.
So moved. Second.
Mr. Henry,
Yes.
Mr. Llewellyn,
Yes.
Mr. Wolf.
Yes.
Mr. Cox.
Yes. We don't have any comments from the public relating to the agenda. Number 8, I'll pass this on to Mr. Llewellyn, our student rep report, please.
Thank you. Got McKenna here to share with us briefly. While she's getting ready to do that, wanted to just update everybody. Our collaboration, our roundtable did have a meeting this past Saturday, and we had the 4 districts, Northmont, Centerville, Valley View, and ourselves involved in that. And we made a few decisions I'll share with you real quick. We are going to be kind of breaking this up into groups with the students tackling some different topics they may want to talk about next year. And Leslie, myself, and one of the Centerville board members are going to try and tabulate a list of invitees that will be made up of legislators, state senators, perhaps a few leaders from OSBA and the State Board of Education. So we're gonna plan a pretty hefty list of folks to invite. Hopefully we'll have a turnout better than 2, which is what we had last year. But we didn't invite as many people as we planned to invite this time. We're even going to invite the governor's office to attend. Whether that'll happen or not obviously remains to be seen. But the more we invite, the more chance we have of good turnout. So that is pretty much what happened there. We're meeting again. That roundtable is in January and February. Try to organize some type of event in April. So that's the plan there. McKenna?
Good evening. So Monday, November 15th was National Recycling Day. And as someone who's passionate about the environment, I took it upon myself to make some sort of reminder for the school, telling people, you can recycle what you can and can't do. There were things you can recycle in school and out of school. I made somewhat of a poster, and I asked Mrs. Earl, who's in charge of the student news, to put it on the news for that day. And it did, and I got some nice comments, just telling me I did a good job and stuff like that. So that went well. I was planning on doing that, so I'm glad it went good. As far as anything else, I unfortunately couldn't make it to the roundtable last Saturday, but I'm excited to see where it goes, and I hope the state legislators and everybody else will take part in it like they did at one point. I don't think I have any other updates for you guys, but thank you.
Thank you.
She had shared with me that Shabri is under the weather tonight, not here, and Sarah's getting some homework done, so that's the reason those two aren't with us. I appreciate that communication, though. And that's all we got.
That moves us on to Ms. Corbett for the communication update.
I'd like to add something that you mentioned this, Mr. Llewellyn. The State Board of Education, a little bit of confusion going on up there. And as a result of that, Charlotte McGuire, who is the state representative from our area, somehow just ended up being president. So, what?
You're good. Continue, please. You're good.
I just finished.
Okay.
She's now president.
There was a technical difficulty they were addressing, but you're good. Okay. Ms. Janine.
Okay.
Sorry for the holdup.
Good evening, everyone. This is my usual spiel here, but I just want to remind everyone that you can see what's happening in your school district by going to westcarrolltonschools.com. You can access Facebook at West Carrollton City Schools, and you can also access Twitter at WC City Schools. And a reminder that the fall Thanksgiving break begins Monday, November 22nd. Students will return Monday, November 29th, and we want to wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving and thank everyone for supporting the Pirates. Please enjoy the time with your family and friends and just be kind to each other. I say be kind, and then I'm saying it's a food fight. So the West Carrollton Schools, they are having the annual food drive, and this becomes a competition the kids really enjoy. They try to find out who can collect the most items, what classroom can collect the most items. The food is donated to the West Carrollton Food Pantry. Everything stays within West Carrollton, so they're looking for non-perishable food items. And anyone with a child in the school district can send something along with their child to the school. But if anyone is out there that doesn't have a child in the school district, you are still welcome to donate, and you can drop that off at the high school or even the board office. We'll make sure it gets to the right place. Checks, if you'd rather make a monetary donation, please make it to the West Carrollton Operation Share Christmas, or WCOSC for short. I know that's what I did when I wrote my check. And donations are being collected through December 9th. So the food pantry will pick everything up December 10th, so it's very important we get all the items by that deadline. And the high school career fair. We are still looking for businesses, anyone that would like to come and represent their company. Doesn't matter what field you're in. I put a few things up there that I was thinking about today when I created this, but they're looking for any business. And what does it take to get from high school to where you want to be? So maybe it takes getting a degree from a college. Maybe it takes going to a technical school. Maybe it takes going to a trade school. Maybe you don't need to do any of that. Maybe you can get a good job with just a high school diploma. These are the things our kids want to learn and want to know. So please consider coming and being part of the career fair and talking to these kids, inspiring them and letting them know where they need to go from graduation to getting that dream job. So there is an application, and I know the link up there is kind of small, but if you just go to westcarrolltonschools.com, under district news, you'll see an article about the career fair, and you can find out more and hopefully participate. So I know Mr. Haig can talk more about this, I'm sure, but we have roofs and some windows and a sidewalk, and it's all very exciting. At the left, they're doing some facade work, but you can see the white material that's draping over the roof line there that is part of the roof work that they were doing. So that's pretty exciting. That's at the pre-K1 building. And this morning, I snuck in the fenced area of Holiday, and you can see the window frames that are up. There's plywood there. There are some actual windows that are in the building. You can also see the sidewalk that's in front of the building. So things are moving along. I want to remind everyone, if you'd like to follow that progress, go to westcarrolltonschools.com, construction reports. And a reminder to keep watching for those updates that come directly from your child's school every week. Dr. Townsend also sends updates weekly, and we want to apologize for the technical difficulty with her message last week, which is otherwise known as Janine hit the wrong button. So I take responsibility for that, but we did get the correct information out on Friday. We also post that information on our website every week. So if something does go askew in the future, you can always go there. So that is that. And again, happy Thanksgiving. I hope everyone is safe, respectful, responsible during next week. And we look forward to the kids coming back on the 29th.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, on to the business side of the meeting. Mr. Haig.
Thank you. Since Devin's not here, I'll be filling in on the HR side of it too. So we'll run down quite a few items here in a row, I guess.
Yes, sir.
For item 10, the superintendent recommends that the board approve the following personnel items. Item A is to amend the salary notice of 2 individuals for the 2021-2022 school year. Item B is to hire 1 individual on a salary notice for the 2021-2022 school year. Item C is to conditionally employ 1 individual, or the following substitute teacher, speech pathologist, school nurse, home instructor, or principal for the 2021-2022 school year, pending approval by the Bureau of Criminal Identification and Investigation and consensual drug screening, as required by Ohio Revised Code 3319.291 and the policies of the West Carrollton School District.
I need a motion and a second, please.
So moved.
Mr. Sloan, roll call.
Mr. Llewellyn,
Yes.
Mr. Wolf? Yes. Mr. Cox?
Yes.
Mr. Henry?
Yes.
You have anything to add to this, Mr. Haig? Nope. Thought I better ask.
Okay, the superintendent recommends that the board approve the following personnel item. Item A is to grant a supplemental pupil activity contracts to the listed individuals for the 2021-2022 school year.
I need a motion and a second, please.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Sloan?
Mr. Wolf? Yes. Mr. Cox?
Yes.
Mr. Henry?
Yes.
Mr. Llewellyn?
Yes.
Okay, item 12, the superintendent recommends that the board approve the following personnel item. Conditionally employ the following individuals pending approval by the Bureau of Criminal Identification and Investigation and consensual drug screening as required by Ohio Revised Code 3319.291 and the policies of the West Carrollton School District, and that is hiring 4 substitutes for the classified side.
Okay. I need a motion and a second, please.
Second.
Mr. Sloan?
Mr. Wolf? Yes. Mr. Cox?
Yes.
Mr. Henry?
Yes.
Mr. Llewellyn?
Yes.
Item
Item
14.
Item
Oh, 13, I'm sorry, 13.
Yep. The superintendent recommends that the board enter into a contract as presented with Senior Assistance Incorporated to transport a student to and from the Wellness Center in Mason, Ohio for the 2021-2022 school year.
And I need a motion and a second, please.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Sloan?
Mr. Cox?
Yes.
Mr. Henry?
Yes.
Mr. Llewellyn?
Yes.
Mr. Wolf?
And now item 14.
Okay, item 14, the superintendent recommends that the board allow the business manager to auction the following vehicles using an online auction site, govdeals.com. Item A is 3 school buses, local numbers 19, 21, and 33. And item B is 1 maintenance van, local number 104.
I need a motion and a second, please.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Sloan?
Mr. Henry?
Yes.
Mr. Llewellyn?
Yes.
Mr. Wolf?
Yes.
Mr. Cox?
Yes.
I would ask a question real quick before we move to 15. It wouldn't affect how I voted on this, but any just thoughts you have on value of these things? We're looking at a couple thousand on each of them, maybe. That
I was going to let you know that the 3 school buses, trade-in value on those were about $2,500 each. School buses are not easy to come by right now, like everything else. So we are hoping that when we go to auction them, we'll pull more than $2,500 each. But if you'll notice, this $2,500 trade-in value on a bus in the next line item, the new bus is $87,000.
Yeah.
Tires on that school bus are about $2,500. So, but it's just a matter of we're trading in buses. There are 2 1999 school buses and a 2001. So we're talking these will be 23s by the time they come, or 22s by the time they come in. So vehicles over 20 years old on that.
So we got our use out of them.
And then maintenance van 104, I don't have a trade-in value on that. Again, it's a 2007, low mileage for a van, but rough body, a lot of rust. But we're hoping that'll probably bring more than the school buses on auction.
Yep.
So maintenance vans are almost impossible to find right now.
Find them right now.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions? Oh, item number 15.
Okay. The superintendent recommends that the board authorize the purchase of 3 72-passenger integrated chassis school buses from Cardinal Bus Sales, Lima, Ohio, based upon the bids received through the Southwestern Ohio Educational Purchasing Council as presented. The buses purchased shall comply with Ohio School Bus Minimum Construction Standards as published by the Ohio Department of Education. It'll be 3 72-passenger school buses at a cost of $87,633 each, or a total cost of $262,899.
I need a motion and a second, please.
So moved.
Second.
I'll make a comment on that one too. On that, $84,000 of that is general fund money that we're going to purchase buses over the summer. We held off on that, so we do it as a group. So the rest of that money will be coming out of capital improvements account to pay for that, to pay for those buses. So it's kind of a split in funds, but it'll be one purchase order with the funds on it then.
Great, thank you. Mr. Sloan?
Mr. Llewellyn?
Yes.
Mr. Wolf?
I just want to say I have trouble spending money, so I didn't move or second either one of those, but I will reluctantly move yes.
How many miles are on one of those vehicles?
On those buses?
Yeah, just
Our
guessing.
miles aren't super high. We're probably 185,000, between 160 and 185,000 on those, which is low compared to a lot of districts.
Sorry, Mr. Sloan, go ahead.
Mr. Cox?
Yes.
Mr. Henry?
Yes.
All right, and then on to item number 16.
Spending more money, Mr. Wolf. The superintendent recommends that the board authorize the purchase of 1 3/4-ton maintenance van from Bo Townsend Ford, Vandalia, Ohio, based upon the bids received through the Southwestern Ohio Educational Purchasing Council as presented at a cost of $40,700.
Need a motion and a second, please.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Sloan?
Mr. Wolf?
Yes.
Mr. Cox?
Yes.
Mr. Henry?
Yes.
Mr. Llewellyn?
Yes.
All righty.
Ryan, I'm going to let you do your own financial reports.
I was going to say, would you like to stay up there and do the financial reports? Item number 17, Mr. Sloan.
Thank you. I ask that the board approve the following financial items as presented. Item A, purchase orders requiring then and now certification, and item B, the October 2021 financial reports.
I need a motion and a second, please.
So moved. Second.
These are the reports for the first 4 months of the year, July through October. Pretty standard, so nothing really out of the ordinary in October, so.
And any questions?
Well, yes, I've kept an eye on for several years, two things in particular, although if you go through, there's a whole bunch of things you wonder about. But, student fees, but probably more important is principal funds. And, know we get a report from the principals. I just would like to know, if they're building up a war chest, I'd like to know what it is for. And, we don't always get that, so, it is interesting to see the difference between, a lot of these, buildings. But it's been that way for a long, long time, and, probably will continue that way in the future, but, when we do get the reports from them by way of you, if you could just say, hey, if you're gathering up a bunch of money, tell us what you got in mind, you know?
Go ahead.
It's on the reports. It's on the bottom of the reports. They have what they want to spend it on.
Yeah,
So a lot of them made some big purchases buying Chromebook carts pre-COVID, and then we received different grants and ESSER funds, so we finished the purchase. So
I guess what I should have said was they keep doing that. That's good, they keep doing that.
yeah, I mean, we'll have to continue to refresh some of our cards as time goes on. So they do cost money, and I think it's a good use. Plus, we're also fundraising again, so we're seeing deposits going into those accounts.
Well, while we're talking about it, it's a long way out, but when you get to the end of the year, I've always thought they ought to be pretty well down to nothing.
I'm aware.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Sloan, roll call?
Mr. Wolf?
Yes.
Mr. Cox?
Yes.
Mr. Henry?
Yes.
Mr. Llewellyn?
Yes.
Number 18, Mr. Sloan?
Okay. You mind passing one around, please? So this item, I asked for the Board of Education to approve the 5-year forecast as presented.
I was going to say, need a motion, a second, please.
Okay.
Second, need a second?
Got it.
Yeah, got it.
Got it. So this is, we do our 5-year forecast in May and in October. So this is an update to the one that I did. Thank you, Mike. Sorry about that. This is an update to the forecast that was done in May. So this forecast goes out through June of 2026. It is for our general fund only. For the board, I gave you a cover sheet. Just kind of talks about like 3 of the main areas: state funding, ESSER funds, and then just the forecast in general. As we all know, this is the first year of the new state budget biennium, started in July. But the problem is that school districts across the state have not seen the details of that funding formula. So we won't see those numbers in details until next month. So, I mean, all districts across the state are kind of just put in that position to put together a forecast without actually seeing what our state funding is going to look like. So we just do the best we can, and then we'll update in the future as necessary. One of the big changes to state funding is that it's the concept of the state funding districts directly for the students they are educating. So in the past, as opposed to us receiving money for our students who go to community schools, and then in the past, we would get the money for those children, and then ODE would then redirect that money away from us and give it to the community schools. So on our books, it would show up as a revenue and as an expense. So now, and the same concept for open enrollment. So open enrollment, if a student, for example, was going to Dayton originally would get the revenue for that student, and then there would be an expense for Dayton to transfer that money to us. So now, for students going to charter schools, ODE is sending that money straight to the charter school, so it's not a pass-through for us. And then for us, open enrollment is a pretty big revenue generator. So now, the open enrollment students are going to be counted in our enrollment, just like all the other kids. So that open enrollment revenue will be in our state foundation revenue. It won't be on our forecast. It'll be in the state foundation number. It won't be on a separate line on our forecast under other revenue. And then the other big change is, as I mentioned, so we see on our forecast, we see a big decrease in our purchase services expenditure line, and the purchase services line is in the past where, like, that's where we would record the transfer that went to the community school. So the decrease in our budget for purchase services is because on our books we don't have that expense for community school students, since ODE is funding those students directly. And then for fiscal 20 and fiscal 21, we had a fund on our books. It was Fund 467, Student Wellness and Success. So that revenue source, that pot of money, is now just going to be rolled into the general fund as a whole. So I know Mr. Wolf asked about that a couple months ago at a board meeting. So Fund 467 was just a 2-year deal. That's another change, to our general fund going forward. ESSER funds, the stimulus money, we've talked about that a lot. That shows up as Fund 507 on our books. Federal monies. On the cover page, I just kind of recapped what's going, the numbers there and what's going on with that. That's something that the districts across the state, are accounting for in their forecast, and the likely scenario of the ESSER, the ESSER money is, we're spending that money through about the summer of 2024. So as that money is phased out and goes away, then a lot of expenses are moved from federal funds back to our general fund. So that's why on our books it looks like our expenses are increasing as we look at FY24 and FY25. So on the chart here, it just shows the projected ending balances for June 30th. So it's June 30th of 22 out to June 30th of 2026. We have, we're in pretty good shape in 22, 23, 24. The budget's staying, the balance is staying pretty steady, and then and then 25 and 26, with flat revenues and and the possibility of and the need to move ESSER expenses back to the general fund causes the balance to start decreasing in the future. So I mean, this, it's constantly changing, and we'll update it in May, but this is just kind of what we're looking at now. And the fact that we have over 4 months, our balance covers more than 4 months of expenses for the next few years. I mean, that's a good situation to be in. We haven't, 2016 was the last time we passed an operating levy, so that was 5 years ago. And before that, we were off the ballot for 9 years, from 2007 to 2016. So I mean, that's our goal again, is to stay off the ballot for operating funds as long as we can. And we're in good shape for the next couple of years, and we'll just obviously just keep monitoring as we move forward.
Great. roll call.
Can I make a comment, please? You sent out an email, well, maybe last week or so, after the Capitol Conference. And I tell you, from as far as I'm concerned, anything that comes from Howard Fleeter is worth listening to and reading and such. If I read you correctly, and I'm gonna kind of just create a situation here, and you tell me whether I'm right or wrong. When the budget was passed back in June, you didn't hear much from Matt Huffman. Now, Matt Huffman is the president of the Senate, but you didn't hear much, and the House moved ahead and was able to put the fair funding provisions in to the budget without a whole lot of resistance. However, things are changing a little bit at this point, because you just said that it's difficult for a lot of local districts to make their budget because they're not quite sure what the state's going to do, because the state's not sure what's going on. There may be some revenue situations and things like that. And that along with all that problem, perhaps the fair funding thing, they might revisit that and maybe change it, and then next thing you know, you got some Senate provisions in there. Is that a fair observation?
Yeah, so the House, like when they introduced their version of the budget, like in March or April, I mean, they talked about the new funding plan, requiring about a phase-in of about 6 years, and so they wanted the budget language to kind of guarantee that the fair school funding plan would definitely be in place for 6 years, and the Senate basically is like, we'll approve this for 2 years, but we're not going to guarantee that that this plan exists for year 3 through 6. So, and the article I sent you talked about Howard Fleeter's just kind of worst case scenario concern about income tax reductions affecting the ability of this funding plan to be funded in years 3 through 6. So that's an unknown in the variable, and just the Senate's reluctance to commit to this plan beyond year 2.
Yeah, absolutely. You have to, if you watch that very carefully, you have to recognize the fact that Matt Huffman has always been a suspicious character in terms of things that go on up there, because I think he may have backed off from, you picked your battles. So he may have backed off from a fight back in June or earlier than that, knowing full well that things were going to maybe change a little bit and probably that he'd have another shot at it. And then the House, of course, I don't think Mr. Cupp is, I've heard that perhaps Mr. Plummer is going to be the new speaker, but I think the Senate, at least under Mr. Huffman, would always prefer to be in charge and have it their way, and that hasn't changed, even though it might appear that it's changed. So I think there's more drama going up there than we would like to see, and because it leaves us down here wondering what's going to happen next, what's it actually going to look like when the money starts flowing and all that kind of stuff. And so is that all correct, pretty much on it?
Well, maybe we can have Mr. Antoni update us on the drama, and maybe he can help control the drama. I don't follow it closely enough to give opinions on the drama that you're referring to.
Okay.
But I do want to clarify that you're talking about Matt Huffman, the senator. You're not talking about the fine Matt Huffman that you and I know, the former treasurer, the former treasurer from the C2C who left the CTC and went back to Arcanum.
He's
correct?
that Matt Huffman is a nice man.
Are we good, Mr. Wolf?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
No, you're not gonna be fine necessarily because things happen to you, but that's okay. You can deal with it.
Mr. Cox?
Yes.
Mr. Henry?
Yes.
Mr. Llewellyn?
Yes.
Mr. Wolf?
Yes,
Item number 19, Dr. Townsend.
Thank you. I need a motion and a second that the board approve the resolution as presented to expand employment of substitute teachers pursuant to Ohio Senate Bill 1.
So moved.
Second.
And roll call?
Mr. Henry?
Yes.
Mr. Llewellyn?
Yes.
Mr. Wolf?
yes.
Mr. Cox?
Yes. Okay. Now we move on to our comments and reports. Do we have any committee reports this evening?
The only comment I'd make is, prior to our next meeting, and even if our meeting was on the 1st, prior to that, we have some athletic events starting up for winter sports, so check that out on the website. Thank you.
I want to share a little bit about the Finance Committee. We met since the last school board meeting. I wanted to give you guys a couple of updates, and then, and Don, of course, was there with me. Wanted to also, though, kind of share something with the board that I'd like to do in this committee. Two things we decided. One was that we're going to add a meeting. Instead of meeting every 6 months, we're probably looking at every 4, so we may meet 3 times a year instead of twice. But one of the things I wanted to let you know that we're thinking about, to see what your thoughts are tonight, is I would like us to consider as a board having this committee assist us in drafting a resolution that would pertain to when we go on the ballot in the first place. So, for instance, if the committee came up with a recommendation to us that when we we'll kind of refer to what Ryan did here, when we reach a level where we have just 2 months of general fund dollars in our cash reserves, which according to what he did would be in 2025, when we get to that level, that as a board we would agree that that is the point in which we start looking at promoting an operating levy or looking at trying to raise funds, and obviously the levies are the easiest way to do that, to generate the most revenue. They're not easy, but the best way to, maybe the best is the best word I should use, to raise revenue. But I think it's a good idea as a board to communicate to the public well before we ever do anything what the circumstances are going to be for us to ask in the first place. So as a committee, I think it would be a good task for us to look at this. Other boards use a period of months, like what Ryan shared here with us. Other boards use a percentage. So if you reach a 15% total at the end of a given year, or 10% or what have you. So I wanted to just see what you guys thought about this committee coming back to you with a recommendation sometime next year to see what you thought about it. And basically just drafting a resolution that we would come to an agreement that that's what, we would be looking at doing should the time come. At some point it will. I like the fact this could be 3 or 4 years away. That's a good thing. But I think it's good to communicate that well in advance to the public so they know what we're thinking, and so it doesn't look like we're just in desperation trying to do something. So what do you guys think? Any thoughts?
So in the past, Mr. Ryan, what do we look at as far as, like you said that we've got 3-4 months of operating funds in the bank? When in the past have you suggested to look at this? What is the normal procedure at your point?
In general, I would say it was probably 2 or 3 months, but I think you also have to look at how much your deficit spending, because once a district starts, once you start deficit spending, it's really difficult to get out of it. And if your deficit, so if you have 3 or 4 months, but you're deficit spending by $4 or $5 million, you pass a levy, you're still going to have to cut $2 million to have, to have a balanced budget for a few years. So, I mean, I think, the main, the main parameter is, is that 2 or 3 months, but we also need to be cognizant of the deficit spending.
I definitely believe it needs to be a conversation we're probably going to have in the next short bit here to look at those numbers, right?
I mean, the forecast, to me, the forecast kind of tells you what not to let happen. And I mean, the good thing is, this is a couple years down the road, and hopefully, when we get a couple years down the road, hopefully it turns out that the numbers, were a little bit conservative, that things turn out better. But it's just kind of a guideline to not actually, have deficit spending of $3 or $4 million, because when we pass a levy, it usually generates between $2 and $2.5 million. So a levy is not going to solve $4 million of deficit spending, and to have to make $1 million and 1.5 million of cuts, a couple years down the road. I mean, that's a lot of, that's pretty significant and could involve a lot of people, and that's obviously just a scenario you don't ever want to get to.
That we don't know what the state budgets are going to look like. All right, thank you. Anybody else? All right, we'll go on to our superintendent. Any comments tonight?
I just want to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving.
Ryan?
I will concur with that, and nothing else.
Okay. We don't have anything from our Education Association or from the classifieds. Central office? Mr. Haig?
Yeah, just something real quick. 2 items real quick. One is I want to talk about the buses just real quick. I'm going back in 96 and 97, when Dana Green had this job, business manager, I was transportation supervisor. We came in, we had a very old bus fleet. And the first 3 years we came in, we used our capital improvement funds to try to upgrade that fleet. We bought 5 buses 1 year, 4 the next, and 3 the third. So we had bought 12 new buses in that time period, in a 3-year period. As a district, we've been buying 1 to 2 buses a year, but now we've hit that mark where those buses became 20 years old just a couple years ago. So our bus fleet is aging very quickly, because we got 12 buses that we bought new over a 3-year period. Now we're only buying, in the same 3-year period, we might only buy 5. So that's why we're seeing 3 buses on the agenda now, because we have to play a little catch up. We want that fleet to be under 20 years old. We don't like those buses over 20 years old, because they cost more to operate, to run, they break down more, there's more body work you have to do with them. So that's why you see 3 buses this year. We'll probably come back with another 2 next year, trying to play catch up so we get our fleet back down. Just because when we came in, and here's what happens, somebody was doing 25, 27 years ago, back when they were talking about contracting buses, they quit buying them. When we came in, we had to try to bring that fleet back up and change it a little bit. So now we're feeling the results of it, because we're hitting that next round as it rolls through. And that's why you see 3 buses on the agenda for this. And that'll happen for a few years. I will say, when we bought 5 buses, they were $32,000 a piece. Yep. When we bought 4, they were more like 36, and by the time we bought 3, they were up to 40. So buses have, in 25 years or 24 years, they have jumped or more than doubled in price, and that's just the way that goes. On to a different topic, the building project, going well. We're still on target. We're still running well. The PK1 is completely dried in, so the roof is on it completely. They're running heat inside the building, because we have gas running to it, so that it's heated inside. Windows will be arriving next week. They won't be installed next week, because it's a short week with the holidays, so beginning, Monday the 29th, they will begin installing windows. They'll start on the 2nd floor first to get those in, because the heat rises from downstairs, and they'll start holding the heat in upstairs. That's where most of the work is going on right now, is upstairs. The 1st floor is completely plumbed. The heating pipes and all the ductwork is run, and they're beginning installation, and they're hanging drywall. So the first floor is starting to see finishes coming in. Seeing insulation on the piping is great because that means we passed those inspections and we're moving along. So that's a great thing. At the 5-6 building, it should be under roof shortly. It's almost, I'd say it's 90% done. They were finishing it up, but this has not been a really good week for roofing. But we're hoping they get the classroom wing finished up. They still have to do over the tornado shelter. Even though the roofing material is not down, it's 6.5 inches of concrete for a roof. It is not leaking inside, so we're not really worried about the tornado shelter right now. And it is holding heat like you wouldn't believe. When you have 16-inch thick concrete walls, there is no heat escaping in there. But they've got windows already installed down they started on the office area, working around through the cafeteria. The plywood that Janine showed, there's 2 different types of windows that go in these buildings. One is a window like you'd buy for your house that is framed in, fits right in. It's got blinds built into it. Those are what we use in all the classrooms. So the blinds are built in between the panes of glass. The other windows with the plywood, those are storefront windows. What they do is they build the frame into the window frame, do field measurements on it, then they order the glass, they get the glass in, and they stick the glass in those windows. That's why you'll see a lot of plywood up now on that. It's going well. 2 things that we're working on, or the Shook is working very diligently on. One is a paint for the cinder block, the primer. It's block fill is what it's called. What it is a thick primer, takes a lot of those crevices and the holes you see in cinder blocks out, makes it more like a smooth finish. Impossible to find right now. They're not manufacturing block fill right now. We're on a waiting list. They will start again next week. They will open the plant back up. The same plant, the raw material used in block fill is also used in medical supplies. They switched over to medical supplies for a while. So now they're coming back to block fill. We had 75 gallons arrive here a few weeks ago. That lasted about 4 hours. They got 95 gallons today. They're done with it, and we could use, I don't know, a truckload still. And we have none at the 5-6 yet. So, but we need to get everything primered because they're ready to paint. And they want to get the walls painted before floors start going down, so they're moving on that. The second thing they ran into a holdup with, we were supposed to have our generator last month for both sites. Generators did not arrive. They said they'll be there in December. Generators not arriving in December. They said March. Now they're telling us generators might be August. Huge, huge thing for us. So now they're scrambling to try to find out plan B. We cannot open our schools without a generator. So we have to have something in place. They know it. They know that we want to be moving in. They need to have that building certified, at least a PK1 for occupancy by May, so that we can knock down the ECC when school's out. Otherwise, everything gets pushed backwards. So they, if nothing else, they will be renting generators for the schools until the new ones come in. But they're trying to avoid that. So they're working really closely with Kohler to try to get our generators. It's one of those things where they told us, hey, so far nothing bad has happened. Sooner or later it will, but we're going to work our way through it. And now we're seeing what they do to work through it. Beacon Electric, Active Electric are the 2 electricians. They're working hard. Buckeye Power Sales is helping them. That's who's in charge of the generator purchase, and Kohler is working with them closely. So we will get there, and they will keep moving, so we will see what happens on that.
Great, thanks for the update.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, sir.
Back to the buses. Do they have seat belts, or where are we on that issue?
They do not have seat belts. And
Is
as far as
that
I
an
know,
issue
we're
that's
nowhere.
debated every once in a while up there?
It comes up every once in a while on
Yeah.
that. It keeps popping up. So, but so far, nothing has changed on that for a school bus.
Why wouldn't we? I wonder. What's the argument? And
Wow, this could go on for a long time. There's a
Yeah.
lot of different arguments. One comes down to seating capacity, the other comes down to cost, and then it comes down to, do you retrofit all your buses, or do you say, no, all the new buses come in with seat belts, so those kids could be safe, but these other kids not, how do you do it? So that's where the argument comes in, is do you make them retrofit or not? And to retrofit it in a seat that's not made for a seat belt, that's not bolted down to withstand a seat belt, that doesn't have the frame to hold a seat belt, the cost is replacing every seat frame in every bus before we can do a seat belt. So the cost could be very, very expensive on that.
well, I thought I'd ask a question about seat belts to take our minds off the generator, but I don't think so.
Okay.
Didn't work.
Mr. Haig?
Yeah.
That decision, when it's made, will be statewide, not district.
Correct. It'll be a statewide. The district can make a district-wide choice on that, but statewide we'll follow the Ohio School Bus Construction Standards, and that's where it'll come in.
And second comment, in that period of time that we bought fewer school buses per year, the capital improvement funds were wisely used on the middle school and the high school phys ed and sports locker rooms, showers, those rebuilds, right?
Oh, not just that. During those years when we were buying one or two a year, we were putting roofs on the buildings. We were upgrading windows in a lot of the schools. The front of ECC, the high school here, are two big examples on it. We had upgraded electric. We upgraded fire alarm systems in the buildings in the high school and the middle school. And there's a lot of other work. And when you're talking about a roof for a high school this size, you know, we got about 180,000 square foot under roof. You know, you're talking millions of dollars for it. We get $800,000 a year in capital improvement. So putting a roof on the high school is normally about a 4-year project on that.
Again, trying to get our minds off the, what were they?
Generators?
Generators.
Yes, sir.
That continuing improvement levy is, that improvement, capital improvement levy is continuing. That's what I wanted to say, right?
Yeah.
So we don't have to worry about that. It's there forever. Are you still borrowing against that into the future, or are you settled down?
We have not been.
Yeah, okay.
No. No, we're sitting pretty good like that. We're following the budget pretty tight right now.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right. Mrs. Tice, anything tonight? Nothing this evening, sir. Okay, anything from curriculum? Good. All right. Moving on. Couple general comments from our public. Mr. Mundy, please state your name, address, and you got 5 minutes, sir.
Only 5 minutes?
Yes, sir.
Oh,
And start? No, just kidding.
All right, I'll be pretty quick. Yeah, my name is Nathaniel Mundy, 1485 South Alex Road. I had the wonderful opportunity, thanks to, well, Tom and everyone else, to go to the OSBA conference. Was that last week or the week before? I don't remember. But what a fantastic opportunity. Learned a lot. I mean, really got to connect with a lot of you guys, and I mean, really start to grow our relationship that we're going to be with for a while. There's a few things I learned other than the boring board basics and I mean the new person opportunities and all that. There's a few little things that I went to see, and I mean some fantastic keynote speakers that kind of taught some more interesting topics. I know one of my favorite ones is the power of after-school programs. She kind of mentioned things that people can do outside of school. I mean, like different sports and different, I don't know, just all sorts of stuff. It was a really neat topic, and I have notes for all this as well. My printer wasn't very nice to me today, so they'll be coming to you guys with emails. So just expect those later tonight. I also learned a lot about empowering and including special education kids in our classes. What a neat topic. I mean, it's cool to think about the idea of, including special education kids in regular classes and how that could help not only the kids in special education, but also, the regular kids as well, to see that everyone's special in their own ways, and that at the end of the day, we're all human. Just a really cool topic. It really kind of drives the idea of everyone being together to be in those situations. So that's something that I was really interested about. And then the last thing that I really looked into a lot was House Bill 123. I'm guessing you guys kind of know a lot about it. To those who don't, it kind of talks about the suicide and the culture around it and like ways to teach, things like that. I know you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it's kind of driving in the idea of how to teach students about what it is and things like that. I know, well, your son, we've all had, issues with suicide, and we've lost people that we knew. So this bill that came through and passed is such a fantastic opportunity to really kind of drive down those numbers of suicide and things like that. So I know one thing they talked about specifically is a thing called Hope Squad, which I'm guessing some of you heard about it before. I'm extremely interested in this idea. Giving the kids the opportunity to kind of be the frontline workers and helping that situation of suicide, because they're right there. They know their friends. They know what their friends are going through. And this Hope Squad idea is just a fantastic idea. So, yeah, thanks again. Last but not least, we went to check out the new buildings. And, wow, what a cool thing. I'm so excited to see these buildings grow. And, they changed already since the last time I was there, about a week ago or whatever. So, yeah, what a fantastic opportunity. Thank you guys so much, and happy Thanksgiving. Thank you.
Thanks, Nate. Mr. Kesters, you're up, sir.
Hello, my name is Mike Kesters, 2298 Forest Dean Court. I'll be honest, I had no intention of speaking at today's meeting ahead of last meeting. The last school board meeting, I was an extremely patient individual in the audience. I don't know if you, as a board and as administration, understand how frustrating it is as a parent to hear that administration arbitrarily changes policy and writes their own rules, and seems to be no consequential changes for that. I listened to the athletic representation here talk about policy change, where basically they wanted 1.5 GPA to practice and all that. The policy, and I can read it because I got it on my phone, but I don't think I need to, clearly states an and, a mandatory and. And I heard a school board president justify the change, and it's already being put in place. And I only heard one school board member show concern that the policy as written was currently being violated. Each one of you took an oath as board members to uphold the policies of the West Carrollton School District. Whether you like them or not, your job is to uphold them. If you want to change them, by all means, you have the right, you can change them. I'm not against changing them. But you need to change them before you act upon those changes. If students arbitrarily change policy and don't act on it, there's repercussions, there's consequences, and they're harsh. I have yet to see harsh consequences when administration, staff, doesn't follow policy. In the last month, I have witnessed personally 4 school board policies not followed on West Carrollton property. 2 of them are fiscal. If you want to go into specifics, I can do that, but I'd like to do that more in a private setting, not a public setting. You talk about school safety, one of the biggest ones that I've seen, people smoking right here in the stands, people smoking in the parking lot. It's clear policy, no smoking on school premises. Someone has to be responsible for telling people not to do it. I respect what the last parents that came in here talked about mask mandates. Those parents kept walking in and out of the building during the meeting. You and I all know those parents were walking out, taking a smoke break, and coming back inside. Don't tell me you didn't know it, because I know you did. It's hard enforcing policy. It's hard doing the job. People make mistakes. I'm not looking for people to lose their jobs. I'm not looking for people to, be scared to do something. But I am looking for you as board members to uphold your oath, and I am expecting administration and staff to follow the same standards that they want their students to follow. And if there aren't, consequences. And they need to be consistent and they need to be fair across the board. You hold me accountable as a parent to those standards, I'm asking you to hold yourselves to that standard, each and every one of you. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on to comments from our board members. Mr. Wolf?
Yeah, I have a handout. Could you take one, Mr. Henry, and pass it on? Mrs. Corbett, would you mind passing these out? This is interesting. I think you'll find, Mrs. Jones, I'm going to make a comment to all of you. Don't sign up for this thing that I'm going to talk about. No, you go ahead and go, but don't sign up for this thing that I'm going to talk about. Two meetings ago, I was talking about the state report card and how the legislature has put that on us for 30-some years. And I was talking about the worst part of it is when they publicly display test scores and all that kind of stuff. What I did not talk about back then was the recent developments, and I say recent, that's like over the last 8 years or so, but back in 13, when they said, well, we can use these test scores to perhaps promote our voucher system. So they came up with the idea that if a child attends a low performing, and I hate to use those words, I've already mentioned that, but attend that, not a district, but a building. They had it down to the building level. Then that child can request a voucher and go to another school, go to a private school. They're actually using that as a part of their assault on public schools. What I'm going to talk about now is not necessarily an assault, but it's certainly a different, rather unique situation. And it's this thing that was in the paper about a month ago. I find it very interesting. Now you have to navigate this a little bit because the section there at the top was on the front page of the whatever section it was on, and then it went to a page later back in the paper. So I had to kind of maneuver that thing around. But this is, as it says, this is the proposal or plan to have a $35 million private school built in Dayton. Location is in the middle of the page. It's a little bit behind Deeds Point. Deeds Point is a little bit northeast of downtown Dayton, where the Mad River comes in from the northeast and joins the Great Miami. I believe that's called a confluence. So it's up there beyond that, just up to the northeast. It's going to be right in there in that particular area. The reason one of the reasons this was in the paper is that this group was at the Dayton Commission meeting, City Commission meeting, because they needed to get a change in zoning for this building to be built. They also had to make a request that a dog park would be moved in order to make room for this thing. Both of those things were accepted very, very readily by the Dayton City Commission. No problem. They about fell over each other trying to pass that thing through. The building looks to be, and the Dayton Daily described this as a fancy state-of-the-art building, and it looks like that's exactly what it's going to be. I wasn't able to get a picture for you to look at, but it's going to include a clinic. So their plans are to address the health issues of the students. I mean, they're going to cover everything. The plan is basically to spend, after the building's built, to basically invest about $30,000 per student per year. The plan is to start with about 400 students in grades pre-K to 8th. So they're going to have maybe about 400 students there. That may grow. It probably goes to, will shake out as maybe 2 sections per grade level, and they're probably looking at 20 students per section, per class, I should say. Now, here's where it gets interesting. The plan is to have 2 teachers in each classroom. So it would be like a copy of Frank Nicholas. The only difference being it would be 2 teachers in every classroom. Again, maybe we'll see how that shakes out, but they're going to have all sorts of support people and what have you. Now, the money for this thing, there, as you read through here, you can read this before you go to bed, but this is, they have a number of local neighborhood organizations and probably some other companies, but the biggest part of this fundraising is coming from the Connor Group. I always thought the Connor Group was a architectural company, and it is one arm of it. To bring it a little closer to home, when you go down to Austin Landing, catty corner from that, in the corner of that area where the airport is, there's this really fancy building sits out there on the corner. That is a Connor Architectural Company. They are more known for their real estate. That's where they're making their money, and basically lots of money. And the CEO has lots of money. And so, and you know, let's face it, people who have lots of money have to spend some of it on a charitable situation because otherwise the taxes will eat them up. But anyways, this is going to be interesting. The Connor Group, they have a Kids and Community Partners, which is a nonprofit which is basically planning and funding the new school. Now, they spent a lot of time, well, for years, they checked this out before they decided to build, as soon as they build this building and run it. And you tell Mrs. Jones, I don't want any of you people applying down there, okay? Don't do that, because it might be very tempting. But it sounds amazing, and the good thing about this is, I had one more thought about the amount of money of the $30,000 per students. And Mr. Sloan, did I do the right math when I multiplied 400 students times 30,000 and came up with about $12 million a year just for that building by itself for student support? Is that about right? I think it is.
Okay.
Well, they're putting a lot of money into this thing. So we'll see how that works. Just two additional things. In terms of accountability and trying to see how this actually works, the only thing I can think of would be that I would think they would join in the state testing. Why not? So you could do a longitudinal study of that and see how that each one of those grade levels did in terms of compared to the every other district in the state. But realistically, it might take more of a the other direction, and that would be waiting maybe 4, 5, 6 years for let's say a fourth grader who would start there whenever they start up, and then go 5 years, 4 or 5 years till that student becomes an eighth grader, and then ask the question, okay, how does that student compare to all the rest of the students in the whole world in terms of being ready for high school? Well, that's the way that's the one measurement that you would have. So one way or another, it's going to take a little while for accountability, but nevertheless, that's somehow that needs to be held. They need to be held accountable like everybody else. Now, whenever I read an article like this, I'm always looking for cheap shots. I'm always looking for zingers. A zinger is a comment about somebody or something that is critical of it. Well, I didn't have to look very far. There were people at that meeting. Most of the people at that meeting spoke in favor of this. Lots of people spoke in favor of it. But there were a couple of people who spoke in opposition. One person said, for example, public schools do not get better by taking money away from them. And so if you take students away, you're going to take money away. And so that's not such a good idea. Somebody else said, here comes the zinger, somebody else said, there are a lot of schools in that area. Oh, by the way, I should have mentioned this. They're thinking about in terms of students, they're thinking about a 3.5 mile radius of that place, which would be primarily Dayton, but you probably could get up to North Ridge, you could probably get over to Stebbins, Mad River and all that. Although it does have a cap of about 40%, I think, of the students being Dayton Public. Well, I don't know how they're going to hold to that, but we'll see how that all shakes out. Somebody said, well, there's a lot of schools in that area. And I had a thought and I lost it, and I'm going to try to go back to it later, but just bear with me. The principal responded to that comment and said, well, this is a quality school. Now, that's a zinger, because in saying that, he said, well, none of the rest of those, not one of them is a quality school. You know, so that was a shot. That was a cheap shot at all the public schools in the area. So that wasn't very nice. One thing I forgot to say, and I need to go back to that, they're going to feed people 3 times a day. They're going to feed them breakfast, they're going to feed them lunch, and they're going to feed them supper. And again, I mentioned before, they've got a clinic, so they're going to deal with their health issues and all that kind of stuff. It's just amazing what they're going to do. The other zinger was the one word which is used, and you know, when it comes to talking about all of us, When they talk about low performing and all that, that's a cheap shot, low performing. But in this particular case, the term that they used, and it's up in that opening section that was on the front page, it'll be the solution to educating underserved children. Now, there's a shot to suggest that students in that area, a lot of them, are underserved. Now, you can imagine what that means. I couldn't help thinking, obviously it was a shot at the public schools, accusing them of not serving the students properly. But I couldn't help thinking this was a Dayton City Commission. Might they not have been suggesting that the city, in terms of health programs and protection and welfare and all that kind of stuff, maybe they aren't serving either? I don't know. I wondered what that particular zinger might have included. But this is interesting. It's going to be something to watch. I do know I saw an article about a week or so ago. They've moved the dog pound, or about to, so they're moving on. And look for information about this, because you're going to see more and more about this as it gets built. And the picture. It's a shame I couldn't do a better job of getting a picture to you, because the picture of this school looks very interestingly like that building down there on the corner of Springboro Pike and Austin Boulevard. So I'm assuming that the Connor architectural firm will provide the architecture for that building. That won't surprise me. And there'll be some other things. But in a sense, the one good thing about this is that they won't be taking state money, although they might be saying, okay, students, you pull away from Dayton Public and you're going to be able to take $4,000 with you, and we'll take it. We'll gladly take it. Now, that's not going to necessarily make them even, but in some ways they'll get their money out of it. But I do have to mention this, and that is all these people up in Columbus who really, really do not like public schools. They just don't, not at all. And they're always trying to come up with ideas to kind of switch them out. I will give them this. There's some passion there. There's some real strong feelings about that. And there's some people who believe in that kind of action. And for an individual, and it's basically one person pushing this, the guy that's got all the money, Mr. Connor, but his company has to go along with what he wants to do. There's some passion there. I mean, if you're going to spend $35 million and probably $12 million every year on a school, you've got some rather strong feelings about that. And it's a shame, because I just think in so many ways public schools are each and every day are doing what they're supposed to do and to educate. It's not the public schools that are the problem here. Okay, I've said this many, many times. Teachers are doing what they're supposed to. They're teaching what they're supposed to teach and all this. And yet somehow, in this whole mess, they've gotten they've gotten a real bad rap in terms of who's responsible for poor performing schools. Thank you.
Mr. Henry?
I'd like to build on some comments that Mr. Mundy made regarding the Ohio School Board convention last week in Columbus. This occurred over 3 days, Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. And there was an offering of, be like Mr. Wolf and give you good numbers. Oh, I'm gonna have to wing it, sorry. The offering was 151 learning sessions in 3 days. They all lasted at least 1 hour, many more than that. I was able to take in 12 of the learning sessions, and I'm not going to talk to all 12. But I will say that there were 3 that really struck me as relative to us in West Carrollton and meaningful in no particular order. The question is the title. Think your board is effective. Mental health community partnerships, which Dr. Townsend brought to us when she joined our district, and we're right on target. And the third one that I really want to address was the second general session of the full conference. And the guest speaker was from the TV series Everyone Loves Raymond. Her name is Patricia Heaton. She's an Ohio State University graduate. She grew up in the Cleveland area, age 62. She's Irish Catholic, and of her 4 sons, one is also an Ohio State University graduate. Miss Heaton loved to read. Teachers were her friends. Very passionate about helping people. Hard work pays off. Build character and self-esteem. Self-efficiency. Many paths in life. And then she got into the real gist of her comments. Learning differences. Diversity. Accommodating those differences of learning styles. And she brought into focus something that the Ohio State University is working on, and I believe the title is Shakespeare and Autism Program, trying to connect the need of autistic students with the teachings of Shakespeare. Hunter Heartbeat Method of Socializing and Communicating. And I'm wrapping up, Mr. Vice President. Communication is something that we continually work on day in, day out, throughout the school year. All of us that are in the public education community, be we elected officials, be we highly skilled and trained individuals that direct our day-to-day operations of the district, our teachers, our support staff, our parents. And let's not overlook the students themselves, because they need to learn so that they can be productive members of society, however far away from today that might be for a kindergartner or about to graduate senior who might go into the workforce, further their education, join the military, and serve our country. And there's many more reasons too. But the key word of my comments are communication. Thank you. Happy Thanksgiving.
I certainly echo the happy Thanksgiving sentiments to everyone listening and our staff, and just hope it's a safe holiday weekend and everybody's back in their routine on Monday following the weekend. I have a couple things I want to say. Nate, I want to congratulate you, sir, on joining us here in just a few weeks. You'll actually be, I think you know this, but you'll be part of our meeting on the 8th, because we will spend some time trying to organize January, so we certainly will look forward to seeing you for that. And Mr. Kesters, I know how you feel, sir. I sat there for several years like you've been sitting for the last few years, and made comments occasionally to the board that were a little, I could hear a little nervousness in your voice, and I can relate to that too, because when you say something to a group of people that you support, it's tough to be critical. And I certainly can relate to that and concur with some of the thoughts you have. Accountability is hard no matter what you're talking about, in my opinion. But I certainly got the gist of your comment, and appreciate Nate and Mr. Kesters in sharing with us. It's never easy to get up. Well, you're going to have to for next 4 years, get used to speaking in a microphone, but it can be pretty nerve-wracking, even for folks like Jack and our staff here who are used to it. Ryan, I would say that, you know, he's been here a long time, and I would guess that if you were to list the top 5 things you probably like the least about your job, one of them might be having to sit here at a microphone maybe not, but it's always a little bit nerve-wracking to sit here, even if you get used to the fact you do it. I'm not sure if Tom's too shy about talking, but the rest of us, we're gonna miss that. You know, I know we
Like a sore throat.
we joke a little bit about it, but you know, when you don't have something, you don't realize you miss it till sometimes you don't have it. So perhaps that'll be true. I would share. I'm not going to talk too much. Don's got us all beat, I think. I'm not sure anybody sat in 12 sessions. I know I didn't do that many. But I'll share more about that. It's very educational when you go to these conferences. 151 sessions covered probably 40 or 50 topics. Some of them are covered multiple times. But the one thing I want to share before I hush here is that one of my incentives to go was I'm really proud of West Carrollton and the districts around us that have embraced having students join our board as student reps, and I want to see how easy it'll be to get other districts to jump on board and do this. I think it's beneficial to us, it's beneficial to the students in our school district, and so one of my incentives to be there was to try and find other districts that are doing this that I just didn't know about. And while I didn't really learn about too many, what I have decided and what I've already got support to do is we are going to introduce a session at next year's OSBA meeting to talk about the student rep program that we have, and Centerville and Northmont are going to join us to have a session about that. So we will be presenting in February. We will be presenting our presentation. That sounds weird, but we'll be making a presentation to OSBA in February to let them know the session that we have planned. And they'll approve that sometime in March, so we'll know well in advance. And then those two districts have also offered to help us with putting this together. And then, of course, if this might be the toughest part, if getting students to actually participate is feasible, we'll try that too. If not, I think we can at least record some comments from kids. When you sit in on these sessions, so much of it, not that they're boring necessarily, but so much of it is listening to narration and listening to someone speak like you're listening to me right now. And to have even if it's just a video for 5 or 10 minutes from a student talking about their experience, that at least breaks it up a little bit, makes it a little bit more interesting. So we're going to do that next year, and I wanted to just let everybody know that's going to happen too. I was able at least to find out how that works, who to send it to, and the timing of when to do it, so that we can get ourselves on the agenda next year to present. So that's all I have.
Thank you. All right, I'll make this short and sweet. Mr. Wolf, looking at those numbers on that school just don't make any sense for sustainability. At 400 kids, you're looking at somewhere around $35 million to sustain 400 kids. That's just the 30,000 in education part. The crazy part is you're looking at 40 teachers, which calculates to 1.6 million per year. We're already at almost $38 million when we can't even get funding for feeding kids. It's crazy. I think $35 million would be better spent on, if he really wanted to make an impact in the area, as to help the local districts around him with sustainability on certain things. If you're looking at $35 million, that's 10.45 million meals. Meals, food for kids. In Montgomery County alone, current stats through that was presented through through a program that my wife is with Sinclair, 3 out of 5 kids in Montgomery County go to bed hungry. 3 out of 5. That's 60%. That's a huge number. And when I look at $35 million to add another school because they're not getting what they need, why not spend that on our local schools?
Well, I'm glad you asked that. Can I butt
It's
in
kinda
here?
crazy.
Mr. Sloan, if I won the lottery, big time, lots of money, and I wanted to come back here with all this money in my pocket, I wanted to pick, let's say, Russell, or just pick a school. Could I dump in, just throw $20 million at
Can I answer that
school?
real quick? So what I learned 2 years ago at Capitol Conference, which is what we were talking about, is there was a student out of Wapakoneta, that did just that. Except he invested in their arts and theater. He paid $18.5 million for a brand new theater facility in Walpock. It is a beautiful facility, and then he paid for all of the fees for all the musicals, all the plays, so the school districts didn't have to do it up there. And then he invested in the choreographers and vocal coaches, but that was all part of what he wanted to do because that's what he was in. And that funding wasn't there, and it was tough for those kids to raise that money. In a farming community like Walpock, there wasn't much interest from local donors, local monies, because it was a farming community. Friday Night Lights is huge up there, which it's well, you know, you coming from the New Bremen area, Friday Night Lights is everything. So they have sports donations that come in, but you can do that. I know there's certain avenues you have to do that legally, but it can be done. So $35 million would pay for 10.45 million meals. That's huge. That's a big number. Us working with Pirate Packs, I see that as being not a waste of money, because yes, it's education, but when you can look at a district or a county that has, 16 districts in it? Montgomery County's got 16 districts. That's a lot of money to distribute between those schools to give everybody an opportunity to up their game. So why add another building? Because there's tons of them. Why add another school? There's tons of them when you can spend that $35 million on the whole picture. That's just my 2 cents. I'd like to thank everybody who came out Saturday to support Pirate Packs. We didn't have a great turnout, but we had a good turnout. A lot of good food. It'll support roughly another couple hundred food packs for our kids. We had a great time doing it. There was a bit of a barbecue smoking competition going on. If some of you didn't catch it, you can see it on social media on the Pirate Packs page. It was a fun night. And then I just want to say thank you to everybody for all of the work that goes into making things happen to wrap up these different projects, the building project, the finance committee, the CTC updates, all that stuff. It takes a lot of time for us to sit down and put this stuff together. So all the information that you hear sometimes gets a little monotonous when you really want to go home because it's been a long day, but we put in a lot of time behind the scenes to come up here and give you guys this information. So I want to thank everybody who puts in that time. Happy Thanksgiving, and be safe. We want to see you all in a couple weeks. If that's all we've got in comments, then I'd like to get a motion in a second to wrap it up.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Sloan?
Mr. Cox?
Yes.
Mr. Henry?
Yes.
Mr. Llewellyn?
Yes.
Mr. Wolf?
Yes.
And that concludes our meeting. We have no official business after, no executive meeting, and no work session. Thank you, folks.